what we are growing. So this is the species at risk list from the United Plant Savers. If you're not familiar with this list, I recommend you check it out. It kind of helped me to identify some of the things that we had growing already that might have been special or that I should look into more. And a lot of people ask with herbalism, like, where do you start? How do you learn about these plants? And the easiest way to do that is to see what's in your backyard and then look up those plants and learn about them specifically. So on the list, the red arrows are the ones that we have planted, and the white arrows are the things that we were fortunate enough to have native on the property. So we have native lady slipper orchids, we've planted trillium, we have native ghost pipe, solomonsseal, wild cherry, maidenhair ferns, May apples, and wild yam are all native. And then we've planted blackcohosh, bluecohosh, bloodroot, echinacea, goldenseal, white sage, and ramps. In addition to those at-risk plants, we also have maple trees, witch hazel, it's not on here, but we also have elderberry, both native and ones that we've planted. And then we've also planted some pawpaw. In addition to all of those, we've planted all these mushrooms as well. When we first started out, we were just going to do the medicinal herbs and ramps. And then the more I heard about how long it was going to take before I could harvest any of that or make an income from any of those plants, I kind of started thinking about doing mushrooms. So we did add mushrooms, and that's one of the main crops that we can harvest at this point. And our mushrooms have only been there a year and a half now, but we're already getting recurring crops from the mushrooms. And some less notable plants that aren't forest farmed, but they are native and growing, are the violets and the plantain and the dandelion and pine and wintergreen. And the reason that I went ahead and mentioned those is because we use those in our products in addition to the forest farm products, because that can kind of help stretch what we are making. So some of these more common plants have similar properties or go hand in hand with some of the forest farm products and plant properties. So we use those in conjunction. So I'll talk about networking a bit in the future slide, but there are some great organizations that aren't necessarily forest farming specific that can be really great resources. My husband is a vet, so we are homegrown here certified, but we're also West Virginia grown certified. We have Potomac Highlands producers in our area, which is through Eastern Technical College, and they do like a CSA crop share box once a month. And if you partner with them and have products, they will put them in the crop share box. So I think maybe 3 or 4 times a year, they'll contact us and put one of our products in their box, which then they're promoting that on their social media and all around, and it kind of gets our name out. And quite often I'll be at a farmer's market and somebody will say, oh, I had your mushroom salt the other week from the Potomac Highlands box. What else can I try? So it's really great. You know, it doesn't get us, their sales specifically aren't making us crazy amounts of money, but the amount of people that have heard about us through there is definitely a benefit. Mountain State Co-op started out as just specifically a hop growers co-op, but now they are doing any person that has value-added products in the state of West Virginia. So that's through West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition has partnered with them. I think Futures Generations is kind of working with them on the value-added side of it. And they are next week taking our products to have them professionally photographed for their website use and our website use just by being a member of them. They took our products to the state parks and promoted them to the state parks on our behalf. So they're working on getting it in all the state parks in the state of West Virginia. And they have a chef that has been using our products to prepare examples for those state park events. as well. So all of these things, and the United Plant Savers, we recently became a botanical sanctuary through them as well. And all those things just kind of help to get more traffic to our website and our social media and kind of create that brand awareness and forest farming awareness as well. So we sell primarily value-added products. We do occasionally sell our fresh mushrooms when we have them, but when you do outdoor grown mushrooms, they pop up, you harvest them immediately, and you can't store them long term. So when we first started forest farming, I did not want to sell our fresh roots. Like, even when we have goldenseal or bloodroot that's at the harvestable age, I knew that to be sustainable, I wanted it to stay in the ground and learn how to use those plants for other uses. So we are harvesting some of our stuff and using the roots in our products, but I don't think I will ever be at a point where I would want to bulk sell our roots. And that's also because we want to keep the farm at a manageable size. It's just the two of us. I mean, we have 3 kids, but they don't want to do any of this, really. So to keep it, manageable for us, but also profitable, we decided to stick with value-added products. It also helps us keep down on the waste when the mushrooms produce. Last year, we had about 200 pounds of mushrooms in a 2-week time period. It was probably a little less than 2 weeks. And it was our first mushroom flush. We had just inoculated the beds last spring. I wasn't prepared for the mushrooms. I didn't think they were going to work. We were still new to all of it. And every now and then, over the couple months before they flushed, Todd would be like, have you told the restaurants locally that we're going to have these? And I didn't want to tell anybody that we were growing them because I was afraid it wasn't going to work. So when I had 200 pounds of mushrooms, I had no idea what to do with them. But we were already doing seasoning blends with ramps and other herbs. So I quickly switched and we did some test batches of some products with mushrooms. And we were able to use almost all of that 200 pounds between selling them fresh and then processing them for our products. We had very minimal waste. I would estimate like less than 10 pounds of the mushrooms went to waste. So our value-added products that we have, we do seasoning blends in 2 sizes. We have like big ones and smaller ones. And then we have some herbal products, like health and wellness products as well. And then we also sell our mushrooms just as dried mushrooms and mushroom powder, which has no added ingredients. It is literally just the dried version of those plants. So some things I wanted to mention are fun names seem to sell really well for us. People don't care what the product is if it sounds cool. So we have a product that we use our witch hazel and pine and vinegar. It's a pine vinegar that we make. And we call it woodland gnome. And people buy it just because it's called woodland gnome. They don't care what it does. We use it, it's an astringent. It's great for your skin. It's great for your hair. But they don't care about that. They care that it has a cute gnome on the label. And we call it woodland gnome. We have another one that's similar to that that we call forest fairy. Sells great as well. We have, this one is one of our newer products that we started last fall, and it's made with witch hazel and catnip. So we call it the Good Witch. The first week we had this, I had so many people buying it simply because it was called the Good Witch. They wanted to know if we had other products with witch in its name. And we have bottles of witch hazel that we sell, but that just wasn't cool enough that it was witch hazel. It had to have like some kind of catchy witch name. And the same thing with our seasoning blends. If it sounds cool, people buy it more. So we have, like I said, we're growing mushrooms. Our fresh mushrooms are forest grown. That's kind of, it's not unheard of because you've all heard of it, but in the market world, when we go out and sell at farmers markets, people are just amazed that our mushrooms are grown outside. that they're not in some warehouse, they're not in some high tunnel or, wherever. They're grown on the forest floor. So I went to an event last fall, and there was another mushroom grower there, and they grow all their mushrooms inside. And she said, "How do you sell mushrooms with dirt on them?" And I said, "Well, the same way you sell your mushrooms, like people just buy my mushrooms. I've never thought of it with them having dirt on them." And she said, "I don't think I could sell mushrooms that have dirt on them." And so it was just kind of crazy to hear how other people perceive the whole, growing mushrooms in the dirt. And she said the same thing about the type of mushroom, because we have wine caps that we were selling that day, and it's not one of those common culinary mushrooms. It's a culinary mushroom, but it's not, shiitake or one of the ones that you're going to hear normally. And we get rave reviews on the wine cap. People constantly come back and tell us how great of a flavor it is, how it's a meaty mushroom, and they really like how hearty it is. But she was just amazed that we could sell wine cap mushrooms because they were just an inferior mushroom in her mind. But they're super easy to grow in beds on the forest floor with everything else. So we sell primarily at farmers markets. And some things that we've kind of learned along the way are, it's okay if you have to travel to your local farmers market to sell. We don't sell at our local farmers market. The markets that we sell at are at least an hour away from us because our locals just don't seem to like the same products that our, people in further areas will buy. So while we can sell our products at the local market, we don't make nearly as much as if we travel a little bit further to sell those products. And I had to really come to terms last year. We signed up with the farmers market, and it just didn't work out. Like, we were there, we were selling $25 worth of stuff every time we came. It wasn't worth going. And I had to learn to be okay with not going back to a farmer's market. Like, we hadn't committed to any additional dates. It wasn't like I was letting them down. I just had to be okay with saying this market isn't going to work out for us. So it took some time, but talking to other farmers at other markets, and sometimes your market just might not be the market fit for you, and that's okay. But one of the greatest things about farmers markets is being able to talk to the people. So people will come up and ask you what you're growing, and as soon as you tell them that you're forest farming, they are so interested in hearing all about all the different things on your farm. How are you growing mushrooms under the trees? If they know what ramps are, they have no idea that you can farm them. How are you planting them, growing them? Where are you doing this? And it's just really great. Most farmers markets, I come home and I'm hoarse because I've talked about forest farming for so long to complete strangers, because everyone is just so interested in it when you start talking about it. And the more you talk about it, the more you tend to sell, because when I tell people about ramps, then they want to try them. If I tell people about mushrooms, they want to know what products we have with the mushrooms. If I tell them about solomonsseal, they want to know what we have that has that product or that crop in it. So the more you talk, it seems to be the more you sell. And then always have some kind of handout or something, business cards, or we did a marketing program through the West Virginia Farmers Market Association, and by attending their online webinars, they gave us $500 in grant money to get marketing materials. Super easy, didn't have to do hardly anything, and then they paid for us to get these really cool scratch cards and a big banner and all kinds of stuff. So definitely look into your agriculture opportunities. The West Virginia Farmers Market Association is amazing, and they are not through the Department of Ag, they're a separate entity, and they're really good about helping you with navigating what you can and can't sell at farmers markets and where the farmers markets are, all those kind of things. And just some little stats there. On average, we pay about $50 to $60 per market per season to sell there. So that breaks down to less than $5 a day. And in the 3 to 4 hours that we're there, we usually make about $200 or more in sales per market. And then we do artisan and craft markets too, because since our products are shelf stable, they fit into the farmer's market, but then they also fit into the arts and crafts spectrum. So when we do those events, they're much more profitable, but they are a little bit longer and they do cost a little bit more to do. But they tend to bring more people in to our website after the fact and return customers as well. So those are all great ways to get your products out if you're making value-added products in addition to selling just your fresh stuff. So in addition to that, we also sell wholesale, and this is where I wanted to talk about networking. We went to an agritourism conference, and it was just our local, regional agritourism. People were talking about U-pick farms and all that kind of thing, and I thought, this doesn't really fit with forest farming. I'm not going to U-pick some goldenseal, but I went anyway, and we ended up meeting a lady for a local market, and she came up to me afterwards and said, we want to carry your products in our market. And she wasn't there on business, and I wasn't there to make, connections, I didn't think. So then she started carrying all of our products in this local market that gets all the DC traffic as they come through. So now every couple months, she's calling in an order to see what products we have, new or what's changed. And then the same thing, we have a connection with the state park locally. So even before we were doing the co-op, the state park had asked us if we had any products that we wanted to put in there. And then there was another event, and someone came up and said, I have an Airbnb and your spice packets are so cute. Can I give them to my people coming to stay at my Airbnb? And I was like, sure, go ahead. And so he will come through about every 2 to 3 months and buy 90-ish bags of spices to leave for his Airbnb guests. So it's just one of those things, the more you talk about, the more connections you make, the better your business is going to do. So then we also sell online. As I said before, I do kind of have a background in e-commerce, and that kind of was one of our jumping points there. So we do sell on Etsy and on our website. There are regulations around that, interstate commerce, all of that, but we do produce our items in a commercial kitchen now so that we can sell on all the various websites without any issues. And I encourage you, if you want to sell online, to kind of do your research and pick out which site you want to start on and learn everything you can about that specific site's quirks and how to list on it and how to sell on it, because each one is different, and you will only be successful in it if you know all of its little quirks and algorithms and all those things. So on that note, we also sell on social media, on Instagram, and if I put in minimal effort, we can produce about $100 in online sales on Instagram a month just from me posting a picture of a product and saying, this product, this is what I love it for, it's X amount of dollars, send me a message if you want it, and then I send them an invoice. If I put extra effort in, we can make well over $100 a week just in our Instagram post, people commenting on the products that we have available for sale and us mailing them to them. So I encourage you, if you are not anti-social media, to use social media to your advantage. This was one of our videos that we posted last spring when the ramps were popping up. And this video got 13,000 views. It's not a spectacular video, but we used trending audio and hashtags and had so many new followers and new people find us and start asking us about our forest farm just from that simple video. So it really is a great way to kind of make people aware of forest farming, what you're doing. So this is the question that I always want to know when I'm going in to make a big decision, like, did I want a forest farm? So I recently took an agribusiness class, and at the end of the class I had to do a presentation on the business, and you could do a fictitious one or one of your own. So I chose to do ours, and when I was sitting down and running the numbers and I was presenting it to my professor, and he said, your profit margin is what on your products? And I repeated the 80% that I had did, and he said, that's kind of unheard of in the agriculture world. The cattle guy down the road is not making that much off of his products. And so we kind of got to talking about it, and because we're doing value added, there's a lot of value added to the product. But to give you an example, I used our mushroom salt. So for our wine cap mushrooms, we have 3 wine cap beds, and for that we have $99 in spawn and $70 in mulch. With that, we produced that 200 pounds of mushrooms that I was talking about. And we use that to make these mushroom seasonings. This one's our mushroom salt. This package cost us 5 cents. The label cost us 2 cents. And the salt inside cost me 47 cents. And we sell these for $9 at the farmer's market. The local market that I was telling you about that carries our products, they sell these for 11. The state park sells them for 10. So we wholesale it for $6 to them. But in the short span of from last September, when we had our first flush of mushrooms, until this March, we sold $1,273 worth of mushrooms, and we only had that $169 invested in spawn and mulch. So, and that's not taking into consideration that I still have probably 30 packs of mushroom salts available that we are restocking in all of those places next week. So with just what we've actually sold, our profit margin on our mushroom salt is 84%. So it is possible to forest farm and make a profit. Our forest farm does sustain itself. We did get a couple grants, but even without that, now we are sustaining, and all the crazy things that I want to add to the forest farm, it's paying for itself. This is a good point to make where your stock, though, make sure that you are getting good stock. We buy most of ours from Ed, but I've seen some people post on social media and say, like, oh, it's ramp season, you should go down to the guy sitting on your street corner and buy you some ramps and plant them. That's not always the best idea, because I assume it's because you don't know how long those have been there, and obviously you don't know where they came from, and you don't want to encourage, them to get it from unsustainable sources. But if you do buy those and plant them, there's a good chance they might not come up nearly as great as if we kind of did an experiment with that last year. We have family property that has ramps, so we brought some back from there and planted them, got one of the bags on the side of the road and planted those, and then we've been planting Eds as well. And the ones that we got on the side of the road, like, I think maybe 1 or 2 popped up this year, whereas everything else came up in abundance. So don't try to cut corners and save yourself a couple bucks by buying from the roadside guy. It's probably not going to be beneficial in the end. And then the other thing I love about forest farming, this is another one of our Instagram videos, but you don't need tractors or special machines or tools, so it's a lot more affordable to get into. I planted 600 ramps this day, and it was literally just a cordless drill and the auger to kind of plant some of the larger bundles that I had. And then we take a dowel rod and sharpen the end and just kind of stab it into the ground to make the hole and drop the bulb in and cover it back up. So for less than $100, you can be well on your way to planting a crazy amount of ramps. So it's not quite the maintenance or the investment on tractors and that kind of thing of other farming, but you do have the time investment of waiting those years for the plants to grow. Another thing I wanted to touch on was using what you already have there. We were fortunate enough, we have an abundant amount of ghost pipe on our property. So I think it was last year, it might have been the year before, the University of Pennsylvania did a forest farming webinar on ghost pipe, and I think it's still available on their YouTube. And they were kind of, it's not a hugely studied plant, but it is an awesome plant, and we have it growing on our property and had this abundance of it, not last summer, but the summer before. So we made tincture from the ghost pipe. And we spent about $45 in the organic vodka to make a half a gallon of ghost pipe tincture. And after the double extraction, we had the 64 ounces, and we sell these little half-ounce bottles for $15. So the bottle itself costs us 75 cents. The alcohol to make it costs 35 cents. So we have $1.10 in these, and like I said, $15 at the farmer's market. I sell them for a little bit more when I sell them online. But it's just a great way, like if you go out and learn your land, check it out through the couple seasons, see what's growing there. You might have a forest farming crop already that you don't know about that you can utilize to help you get started and meet those goals of what you want to get planted. This is also a great talking point at farmers markets. It's not something that I always put out on the table, but if I do have one bottle sitting there, people always ask me about it, because if you've never seen ghost pipe, it looks like this when it's outgrowing, but as soon as you touch it and it's damaged, it starts to turn black. So the tincture is almost black, and the plant itself will turn black. So it has some really cool properties in that respect, but it's becoming a more wide-known product. So we were at a festival a couple weeks ago, and the lady saw that we had other forest farming products, and she said, I recently heard about this plant, and she couldn't remember what it was, and in talking to her, it was ghost pipe. And she was just so thrilled that we had it available, and then ended up buying 3 bottles of that, and then went around the rest of our booth and bought bukus of other stuff, just because she was so excited that we had the ghost pipe. So that's another example of just being able to utilize what you have. And then in the next year or so, we plan to implement some pick-your-own mushrooms. Going back to those 200 pounds of mushrooms, that was a lot of mushrooms to pick. And they were coming up really quick, and it was overwhelming. And then this spring, we had a bunch come up. And we had a friend of a friend who asked if they could come see the mushrooms and pick some. So she came over and did, and she said, I don't know why you don't offer pick your own mushrooms. And I said, well, I never thought about it. Like, I thought about it with the medicinal plants and the ramps, and I knew that was a no-go. And I just never thought about offering pick your own mushrooms. So we are looking into doing that to see, if there's any specific regulations around pick your own mushrooms because they're mushrooms. And we're going to implement that this year. And then also we have linked up with the local state park, and they've requested that we come out and maybe do some cooking demos on our mushrooms or some demonstrations on some of our other products. So we're looking forward to expanding and doing that this year. And then we recently finished our commercial kitchen registration. So next year, we're going to be able to offer like cut vegetables. In West Virginia, you can't cut something and then sell it unless it's been done in a commercial kitchen. Same thing with refrigerated products. Has to be made in a commercial kitchen before you can sell that at your farmer's market. So we've kind of expanded. So next year we'll be offering more than just our shelf-stable things. But I have a feeling we're still going to love the shelf-stable because we can keep it in a tote, and 3 months after mushroom harvest, it's still available. And it's just so easy to move around. So one of the biggest things we've learned is forest farming is not like regular traditional farming. It doesn't fit in the same boxes, and I like to joke and say that as a forest farmer, you can't even wear the same kind of shoes that regular farmers do. Like if you try to go out in some cowboy boots or like those typical farm boots and walk down a wet slope to get to your medicinals, you're going to fall on your butt, and you are not going to make it back up that hill. So if you can't even wear the same shoes as a traditional farmer, you shouldn't think of it in the same aspect as a traditional farmer. So think about how you can uniquely use what plants you're growing and how can you uniquely market those. Most of our products are bought as souvenirs. It's not the souvenir I would take home to my kids, but lots of people get excited to see our products as like an Appalachian souvenir. So we kind of are gearing more towards that in our marketing. And then the biggest thing is don't be afraid to fail. Just try a little bit and see if it works. And then if that doesn't work, you can try something different. When Will came and did our site survey and we looked at the different spots that we were going to plant our ramps, he kind of validated where we were planning on planting them, but then also said, you could try here and you could try there. So all of our ramp patches are like 3 or 4 feet square patches because I wanted to try all the different spots. And for the most part, all of them have worked out. But one of the places that we both thought were going to be wonderful isn't, it's producing, it's a good spot, but it's not flourishing as much as the other spots that we chose. And the only thing I can think of is that it's kind of near the bottom of the slope as opposed to up a little higher, so I think some of the leaves gather more there. So the ramps that we have there just kind of take a little more effort to poke through the leaves. If you move them back, you can kind of see them a little bit more. But that's just one example of, trying all the different ways and seeing what works best for you and your forest farm. What works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for someone else. And I kind of went into it as like a textbook, like I need to know what to do, tell me where to plant, when can I plant it, how do I plant it. But it doesn't have to be like you can do small things and test it, and most of the time it'll work out. And then everybody asks about our mushroom beds, because even when we first started doing mushrooms and I really researched how to plant them, there's not many people growing mushrooms in beds. There's lots of people doing logs, there's lots of people doing indoor grow, but I had a really hard time finding anyone that had examples of their mushroom beds. So this is just a short video of our mushroom beds. These first 2 that you see with the grass growing up are almond agaricus beds. So they have compost in them, and then they're topped with straw to kind of help keep in the moisture. And then the logs you see are lion's mane, kind of leaned up there against the trees. And then these 3 lower beds are wine cap beds. Those are the 3 beds that produce the 200 pounds of mushrooms. So just in those 3 little spaces, we got all of that yield. And the wine caps have mulch in the bottom, and then they're topped with straw. We kind of went back and forth whether we were going to do them solely on mulch or straw, because the mulch will make them last longer, but the straw makes them produce sooner. So we kind of did a 50-50 blend, mixed it all in, and we started those last spring, and by the fall they were producing overwhelmingly. So those are right there, and then we kind of lined them with downed pine that we had all around the property that we didn't have a use for anyway. So we used that to line the beds to kind of, not that it keeps the mushrooms in, they like to grow outside of their designated beds, but for my peace of mind, they are in beds. And then also, something to note is, when I was doing my research, a lot of people said they put cardboard down before they start their beds, just to kind of help with the competitive fungi that might already be there. So that's what I did, and I did not realize that if you use cardboard in your mushroom beds, if the cardboard has anything on it at all, like we got recycled cardboard from our local store, you cannot qualify for certified naturally grown. So if that's something that you want to do, don't do the cardboard, or make sure that you're doing a cardboard that they've approved, because we did find that out too late. But it's okay, like I don't think at any point being certified naturally grown at this point would have sold more mushrooms for us, or it hasn't been, we still follow those growing practices.
Is it the inks or the glues? Because all cardboard has glue, right?
Right, I think it's the ink.
So if you get just plain brown cardboard with nothing on it, you're okay?
I think so. We thought about using like the rolls of packing paper just to kind of, but honestly there's one bed that I ran out of cardboard and I was just too lazy to do, and I was like, I'm just going to see how it works, and it produced just as much as the other ones.
And didn't have more competition?
No. I think the wine caps being such a quick producer kind of out-competed the other ones.
Do you weed those beds like regular beds?
That's a great question. The wine cap beds don't really get many weeds. This last one that you're seeing there is an almostheaven bed. With the mulch, it's very minimal weeds. The almostheaven beds are horrible with weeds because they're compost. So we did start hand weeding them. We're also trying, we do, for all of our other like herb beds, not forest farm herbs, but just regular herbs, we use a propane torch because that's still considered like organic, but it kills all the weeds. So we are considering torching these almostheaven beds this year because they are so overwhelmed with weeds, just to kind of cut down on that. And then from my research, mushrooms will come back even more so after they've been torched. So I'm hoping that that will help them produce even more this year. So.
Can I ask where you got your mulch? Did you make it yourself or have a good source of mulch? Because I noticed that mulch can carry a lot of funguses depending on where you get it from.
There is a local lumber yard about 30 minutes from us, and they do exclusively hardwood lumber. But I think it's kind of, I don't know, like a niche lumber mill thing, and so they will sell mulch from their lumber in like bulk. So that's where we get it from.
That's great.
We looked at getting like the tree drop off, when they come and trim trees. Yeah. We haven't had any luck in that.
I've heard a lot of people say that.
Yeah, like you contact them, ask them, they never bring them. They were even there cutting down and trimming trees on our property, and I was like, can you just drop what you're trimming? And they were supposed to, but they never did. So.
It's super acidic. If you put it around the base of trees, sometimes it'll kill seedlings.
Yeah.
As opposed to like aged mulch from wood. So I don't know if that would have any impact or not.
With the logs, you don't want them to be too old because you don't want them to already have the, another fungus in there. So I kind of went with that same thing with the mulch. Like I didn't want to buy bagged mulch from the store because I didn't know how long they've been sitting there. So we did go with the local one just because I figured it was a little fresher. But there again, you probably don't want it to be like super fresh. You want to at least give it that week or two to set and before you inoculate it. Any other questions?
Herb grinders? Have you been through a few? Do you have a brand you really like?
We have been through a few. I don't have like a specific like commercial herb grinder. The last one we bought was just like a KitchenAid, and that seems to be holding out, but it is smaller than I like.
Yeah.
And then we did kind of get like a bigger food processor one for when we're doing like bigger batches.
Okay.
Um,
How's that working out?
It works out rather well. Our ramp salt and those we kind of use more with fresh herbs, so the food processor works better with that. With the mushrooms, since they're already dry
None of
before
your
we
fresh
make them.
herbs go bad after a while? The ones you're making the salts with?
No, because the salt like dehydrates it and kind of like, so it's almost like a cured ramp salt.
Yeah.
So we'll blend the ramp leaves with the salt, and then I usually like lay it out to kind of like dry before I package it.
Yeah.
But it kind of gives the salt like this really nice green tint, and then you get the flavor in every salt granule as opposed to mixing with the dried salt or the dried leaves.
We've also smoked a lot of them as well, and that adds like a whole nother step, and it's something very easy to do. So like a smoked ramp salt. And you just use a traditional smoker and sort of
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That seems to be like a real selling point with people that like to grill or smoke their own stuff already, is our smoked seasoning. So it's literally just our ramp salt, but in the smoker, or our mushroom salt in the smoker. And then it, gives us a second product that we really haven't put much extra effort in. We haven't had to create something new, and it's just a completely different flavor profile. One of the other products, it's one of the ones that the state park has promoted, is our mushroom hot cocoa mix. And we smoke the mushrooms before we put them in here, and it kind of gives them a nutty flavor as opposed to a mushroomy flavor. So it's kind of like a nutty hazelnut cocoa flavor. And then this one, when the chef from the state parks was promoting it, he made it into a chocolate glaze for beef. So I have not personally tasted that, but here it is delicious, and I'm going to have to ask him for the recipe so that I can try that and tell people.
Do you ever have any concerns about keeping reoccurring customers?
I don't. I would say probably 75% of our customer base is new customers.
Yeah, that's what I'm noticing.
Because we sell, the two farmers markets that we do religiously and love are both resort areas. So the majority of our sales are customers coming through on vacation.
Yeah.
And then they take it home, and I do get requests through our website, like, we saw you at this farmer's market, I got this on vacation, can you ship me some? So that's always great. And then I do sometimes get locals that consistently come back, but with most of our customers being vacationers.
It sounds like you created a market that you found. It's awesome.
We kind of fell into it, and then the farmers markets, the two farmers markets that we love also seem to love us being there, and we're the only people that have these kind of products. So it kind of makes a conversation.
You got a competition
Yeah.
for anyone, they love it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
When you're determining your profit margin, are you incorporating your labor, and if so, how are you tracking that?
I did incorporate our labor in some of the ones. When we did the grant, we had to keep track of our labor time, so just kind of accustomed to keeping track of how much time I'm spending out there. It's a lot, but it's not a lot. Like, I feel like if I was traditionally farming, it would be hours a day, whereas with forest farming, it's maybe a couple hours a week. Like, once they're in the ground, I'm just checking on the plants or checking to see if the mushrooms are up. And really, even with harvesting the mushrooms, it's not difficult. Like, it's no more difficult than picking some tomatoes or, So there is time involved, but it's not as time consuming as I anticipated it would be. Like, I could not have chickens, they take too much time, but forest farming is a little more patient.
I imagine that, the things that you go to check on a regular basis is something fun that you can do with the homeschool kids. Just add it into that. Like, hey, we're going to go check on this stuff today.
Yes. And my youngest loves ramps and checking on the mushrooms, and we kind of worked in knife skills with it, so everybody got their own personalized knife,
Wow.
so they can go, they only get to use their knife if they're harvesting the mushrooms
Yeah.
though,
Yeah,
so, you know, it's fun.
Special.
Yeah.
It's a special night.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
We get some free labor out of them that way.
Yeah. Very smart.
We did have the homeschoolers over to inoculate logs in the fall, so that was kind of nice. They all got to use the drills and.
That was the TV logs.
Mhm.
Now, when you first set up these beds,
Mhm.
what method for the spores did you use?
We have sawdust spawn for
Sawdust.
those. We have not tried grain spawn yet, just because I was afraid of like all the little creatures that might eat the grain spawn. So sawdust spawn seemed a little bit easier. Over the winter, we tried our hand with getting the spore syringes, and we inoculated the rye grain with the syringes. So we do have grain spawn to play with this year. We're adding golden line caps, which, depending on who you talk to, is either just similar to wine cap, but that's like kind of grown a little different, or it's completely separate from wine cap, but we'll see.
So what type of mushrooms do you have again?
The beds are wine cap and almond agaricus, which is kind of like a native portobello style. But then we also have lion's mane, bear's tooth, reishi, a blue oyster. We have elm oyster beds, but we just started those. When I came back from the conference in March, we also ordered bluet, because they can grow on leaf litter instead of mulch, and we have tons of leaf litter, so hopefully that works out. And then one of the presenters there said you can take the chicken of the woods sawdust spawn and just kind of raise the bark off of downed trees that you have and kind of sprinkle it there, and it'll usually take, so we're going to try that this year.
Oh, wow.
But the beds are just the almond agaricus and the wine cap.
From the trees from your property?
Well,
The-
yeah. When we moved in, there was a lot of dead pines that needed to come down. So after we had this huge pile of these, and I was trying to figure out what we could put around the beds to kind of keep them in, and then it just seemed like the easiest thing.
They'll rot away in a couple of years, but
Yeah.
you just replace them with more.
Yep.
And then we're not altering the landscape, everything should just go right back in once we're done.
Are you strictly pines?
No, we have maple and oak too, but the pine is the only one that we've used for the beds.
We were a little short on sunlight, so we needed to drop like 10%, so we went ahead and we cut those, and that got us our appropriate sunlight for the mushrooms, and then we had material for the beds. It's just a win-win.
And then the mushrooms are utilizing that space on the map that's not north facing, it's not really moist. It does get enough moisture because it's completely covered in canopy. So last year, I think I watered the mushroom beds once. Which is a good thing to consider when you place your mushroom beds is how you're going to water them if you need to.
Yeah, I was just thinking that like,
Yeah, I did not think of that ahead of time, but with 300 feet of garden hose, I can reach the mushroom beds.
once a year.
Now, well, I invested in hoses, so they just live. You can probably see them in one of the videos. It's kind of stretched all the way out there because I'm not dragging out all that hose all the time, so it has its designated hose. But overall, it doesn't take much.
Did
Extra
someone
maintenance.
help you decide? Like, was that Will when he came over, or?
As far as placement, or as far
Yeah,
as
like designing your bed layout?
When Will came over, we discussed this area for medicinals and ramps, and it did not check any of the boxes for that. So then when we decided to do mushrooms, we were like, well, we can't use this space for anything else, let's put the mushrooms there. And then he did help us decide where to put all the medicinals and ramps. The medicinals are down on the far end of our property, and we had two downed, are they oak trees, I think? two down oak trees that kind of run next to each other, so if they made a native, like, natural bed there. So we planted all the medicinals in between those two, and it kind of helps keep the deer out because the logs aren't setting flush on the ground, they're kind of just a little up. So if you happen to follow us on social media, you'll see a video of our dog like balance beaming down the logs that surround it. So that kind of keeps the deer out. We haven't had any issues with any deer or any other creatures with any of the beds.
So if you venture into social media and you have a dog or a pet, putting them first and forward in all your social media is gold. Like, people love a dog, people love a cat.
Good to know.
Yes, they do. Pick a trending song and put your dog on there and you will get blown away at the views you get.
So we have lots with the cat checking out the ramps or the dog in the medicinal bed, and it seems to, and it's crazy because something that simple, but then people actually ask good questions, like that gets them interested in all the other things that you have going on, like what's in this bed, what does this plant do, why are you growing that, all those things, just because a dog caught their eye.
Babies might want food.
Yeah.
Exceptionally well.
Have you thought about offering a service for the marketing for people doing forest farming?
We have, actually, if you go on our website right now, it's probably still up there. I find that agriculture in general really has a void in marketing.
Yeah.
So we have, I just don't know to what extent I want to offer and what exactly we want to offer.
You just try it out with some folks
Yeah,
that you'd
yeah.
like.
Yeah. So,
Figure out how to monetize it.
yeah,
Otherwise, you're just giving other people free advice to do what
Yes.
you're
Right.
doing and becoming
Yes.
competition.
yeah.
I've noticed with agritourism, a lot of the conventional farmers just have no thought to do anything else with hosting like dinners or any of those off-the-wall things that you see farmers doing really well with. A lot of people just won't even open up to it.
Yeah,
So there's a big disconnect there.
you're right. Yeah.
And on that note, we did get these cool freebies from the West Virginia Farmers Market, so if you guys want one of our little brochures that has our contact information on the back, so if you think of a question later, feel free to contact us. It's got my email, our website, and our social media, and then it does kind of touch on the history of us forest farming, which isn't a very long history, but it is there, and then our products, kind of briefly mentioned there on the back too.
I don't know, I've sort of been trying to get my head around this, but is there a vastly different set of regulations for tinctures than for the other stuff you do? I've heard that, like, you know, the FDA is getting involved and you gotta have, you know, is that your commercial kitchen to be able to prepare those tinctures? Or anytime you're altering an alcoholic beverage, ABC gets involved as well, or?
Because it's such a ramp tincture and marketing it as like a ramp tincture, but like you could add it to your Bloody Marys kind of thing.
Right.
Because it's such a minuscule amount, like
Yeah.
it wouldn't make a difference. But I have asked that same question numerous times to everyone and anyone. The answer from the Department of Ag that regulates like all of the seasonings, all the other things that you ingest that we would be selling is there's a gray area on tinctures and we don't care what you do.
Nice.
So,
Main thing,
but the FDA does care. So we don't sell our tinctures online for that
Stay
reason.
small.
Yeah,
don't claim to cure anything,
yeah.
Right.
ever.
We don't make any claims, we don't even put dosage instructions on our tinctures for in person. And then we make sure that the labeling is completely FDA compliant as far as what they require on the labels for that.
But you can otherwise just get a bottle of 100 proof vodka and pour it over some stuff and put a cap on it and sell it to people, and there's no other, like, I have certified that it's just, you know,
Yeah.
that's cool. I hope Virginia's the same.
I don't know if y'all seen, but West Virginia just passed a new House bill. I believe it's 4793, and in West Virginia now, every adult male will be able to distill 5 gallons of liquor a year.
Only adult male?
Adult person,
Okay,
couples,
good.
Yeah.
sorry, couples can do 10 gallons a year.
Oh, okay.
So then you can make your own for your tincturing purposes,
Yeah.
because if you've ever tried to find organic alcohol for
Yeah.
tinctures,
And
it's
can
difficult.
you distill it to a higher percentage? Is there regulations
there-
about that? Because I mean, I know like you can't really like be selling
Yeah.
180, 190 proof alcohol without very specific licenses for that. Like, can you
You
make
can't.
it? Can you make it as a tincture?
You can
vehicle
only
and
use it
then-
for like personal use, but
Yeah.
you could use it to make your own tinctures if you were using those for personal use.
It's gonna fall in another gray area for sure.
Right. I was gonna say, if you take your own alcohol and then turn it into a tincture and sell it, are you selling alcohol and now you're an ABC dealer, or are you just selling tincture and you added some water to the alcohol? And again, minuscule amount of alcohol. What you're selling is the herb, not the alcohol. So.
To sell on Etsy, did you have to have any COAs, or were there any regulations? Or are you not selling any of the liquid products there?
We don't sell our tinctures on there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the only medicinal product that we have that is ingestible. So if it's like a topical, you don't have to have that. And then our spice blends and everything don't fall into that, like we don't have to have
Oh, they're
COAs.
not considered ingestible.
I mean, they're ingestible as a food product, but not as a medicinal,
Mm-hmm.
so then they don't require that.